Now, take a look at this. It's not space, but the product of an increasingly popular branch of statistics called data visualization. This piece of work by Israeli data scientist Gilad Lotan maps out Twitter reaction during an increasingly ugly Israel-Gaza conflict.
As messy as Twitter feeds and the topics there are, the relationships are actually amazingly organized. They reflect our society.
What kind of things do you analyze when you look at the feeds coming out of Twitter and other social networks?
One thing I tend to do is look at network structure and understand communities within social networks. So how are people interconnected on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, and how does that affect the way information spreads? Does a certain type of network structure enable faster, better information flows? Does certain structure inhibit it?
Gilad looked at Twitter responses to the bombing of a UN school in Beit Hanun, Gaza, during the last week of July.
You use different mathematics to sort of organize these graphs and show regions that are much more connected to within the region, right? Identify these communities, and that's represented by the colors of the graph.
The closer together two nodes are, the more connections they share. Green represents pro-Palestinian activists, with grey being journalists, bloggers and international media, which Gilad identifies as being more sympathetic to the Palestinian narrative that the IDF bombed the school. In a separate set of blue bubbles are media, public personas and American conservatives he labels as pro-Israeli. It seems in this particular instance, with this particular event, that anyone who reports the facts of what we know, how many people died, what the damage was, is put on the pro-Palestinian side of your graph. And anyone who either doesn't report it or reports the IDF line is put on the pro-Israeli side. Do you think that's a little too simplistic for this incredibly complex and very, very emotive subjects?
The UN example is just one of many examples reporting around these events where systematically various mainstream Israeli media did not put any emphasis on reporting about Palestinian casualties.
Gilad's data visualization identifies the left-wing Israeli news source Haaretz as having the most potential for bridging biases and barriers because it has the most connections on both sides. But Gilad believes that social networks are actually perfectly designed to reinforce rather than challenge our views.
So the fact that we're most likely to only talk to people like us means that we're most likely to see content that reinforces what we already believe, right? What we want to believe. The hope was that the internet and social networks could be this great equalizer where Israelis and Palestinians could finally connect, but that's not happening.